Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another conversation with the Middle East Monitor. My name is Nassim Ahmed, and I will be your host for today's discussion. Last month, many of you would have been aware of a new report that was published by an Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem, which added its name to a growing list of organizations and individuals to declare Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide. Titled Our Genocide, the report documents detailed evidence and persuasive arguments for why Israel's policies and practices in general towards Palestinians should be considered genocidal. To discuss the report, I am joined by Shai Parnes. Thank you, Shai, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Shai is the Public Outreach Director at B'Tselem. Before I dive into the details of the report, I wanted to ask him about its production, just to get his thoughts on how intense this project was within his team. What did it feel like personally and collectively for the B'Tselem team to release such an important report?
So I would say in a matter, we pretty much work on this report for 22 months now, or 21 months, since we've all heard at least the statements of the Israeli top officials at the first days of the Israeli assault on Gaza, which was genocidal statements. Just like Prime Minister Netanyahu called the Gazans Amalek, which every Jewish Israeli kid learns in school, that it's a biblical order for the Jewish to kill all Amalek, including women, children, and even their pets. We've heard many statements like that, including President Herzog saying it's a whole nation out there responsible for the atrocities being committed on October 7th. We've heard the Minister of Defense Gallant saying that Israel will put a total blockade on Gaza, including no water, no electricity, and no foods. Yeah, it took us a while to realize what's going on and really comprehend the full meaning of what's going on and see the repeatedly indiscriminatory bombardment and many other methods, all the way to April 24 when we published the starvation report, which back then was, according to our analysis, amounted to a crime against humanity. And if we only take this component of the genocide, the meaning of starvation is that Israel targeting each and every Palestinian in Gaza. So that means they're targeting the group. They're not targeting anyone or anyone who's only suspected of committing anything. Israel is starving 2 million people, including 1 million minors, which is pretty much the definition of genocide is destroying a group or significant part of it. So absolutely, no one would argue that the Gazans are a significant part of the Palestinian people. But we're not talking about starvation only. We're talking about indiscriminatory bombardment just on from the first days. We're talking about destroying cities as a whole. We've just seen the Gaza aerial footage in the last few days. But we've seen before pictures of Bet Lahia and Rafah totally destroyed. We were seeing again the total blockade, of course. We were seeing the systematic destroying of the health system, and we're seeing not only Israel destroying the present Gaza, Israel is also destroying the future of Gaza by destroying all the education system, including all the universities, and also targeting cultural and social life by bombarding libraries and mosques. So what we're seeing, I would say, is pretty much the textbook of genocide, targeting
Mm.
each and every one in Gaza because he's part of the group.
Mm. You mentioned textbook genocide. I mean, that's one of the phrases that was leveled against Israel, I think as early as October 2023 by a Jewish Holocaust scholar by Raz Siegel. So that was nearly 2 years ago. I mean, you've kind of hinted at this already. Why, I mean, some have also said, why did it take B'Tselem such a long time? At what point did you realize, because someone like Ras Segal, within months, he realized, based on the comments that were coming out from Israel, why did it take B'Tselem such a long time, considering that there are other human rights organizations, leading Israeli experts as well, like Bartov, who have already concluded that what Israel is doing in Gaza is genocide? You've hinted at the answer earlier. So at what point did you decide, yes, it is
Uh,
genocide,
so,
and we will write report about it?
so I would say there's a few stages and levels for what was happening. I guess about the realization, it was probably more than a year ago. But in order to verify as a human rights organization and to make the analysis and to make the consultation and to produce a serious, I believe, report, and not as far as with as an OPED, it's something different. With all the without disputing Segal whatsoever, but it is a different kind of work. Include 80 pages of analysis, and not only, as you mentioned earlier on this conversation, not only what's happening now, but to understand and then to write it, the Israeli logic behind how we get to this point. What made Israel to commit this genocide? What is the historical process that leads Israel to reach this point? Because history didn't start on October 7th, um, from any point of view. Um, so it took us a while, and we had a lot of discussions with our team and a lot of discussion with other experts, and to verify and validate everything and to write and rewrite. That's one uh, one process. Another is, I would say that unlike people and organizations you've mentioned, we actually live under this genocidal regime. And part of B'Tselem team are Palestinians from Gaza, which they managed to flee to Cairo now, or like a year and a half ago, but they keep working. And many Palestinians who lives in the West Bank as subject with no rights at all, and Palestinian citizens of Israel with some rights. Um, so I would say one of our goals was to be very accurate and take the cautious steps we have to take legally and others to protect our team. Um,
Yeah, I
uh,
think it's worth pointing that out and highlighting the fact that, as you said, this is a B'Tselem is a human rights organization, and you're not relying on third-hand account. You have to verify firsthand what is happening on the ground.
Ooh,
To talk us about how you gathered the evidence, because as a human rights organization, as you said, it's not simply just writing an op-ed and expressing an opinion. You have to document every single claim that
so
you are making.
I would say that what's a bit also unique in this B'Tselem report is pretty much we didn't reveal anything new. There was a lot of references in this report and a lot of analysis that we believe that as an organization of both Palestinians and Israelis, but who actually lives here under this genocidal regime, uh, we can have a different point of view and a different sense of what's actually going on. We hear the news in Hebrew, we hear the statement, We hear what they actually talk in their parties, conferences, and others. So that's different. But we had to take our time to understand for ourselves how the Israeli regime, or what was Israeli apartheid regime, became genocidal. And it wasn't, I would say, for some parts of the team, it was also a personal, difficult process to acknowledge, as it is, because one cannot comprehend that this society is involved or committing genocide.
So how did the
It's
title come about then?
inhumane.
Our genocide. I mean, for an organization, human rights organization, there is a distance from the report itself. But in this case, you chose to title it Our Genocide.
That's
And it seemed very
that's
personal and very, I would say, someone might find it offensive as well, you know. I don't know. So what was the thinking behind that to call it Our Genocide?
I would, if I may, I would describe something before, and then we'll get to this point. So in the report, we've pretty much said the three processes or incidents that brought us or brought Israel to become genocidal. I mean, not in terms of justification, because nothing justifies genocide, but in order to struggle to stop the genocide, we would like to understand those who are committing it. Uh, so first, there is 70 years of apartheid regime, of indiscriminatory regime, which involves some of the practices we're seeing right now in lower scale. We've seen forcible transfer before, of course. We've seen demolitions, of course. We've seen indiscriminatory killing. We've seen total impunity for Israelis for 70 years. Maybe not in the levels we've seen in Gaza, but we've seen those practices for 70 years. And then there was the Hamas attack on October 7th, which was real and horrific. And it was total criminal act with crimes against humanity and war crimes. But for the Israelis, it was the first time that the Israeli public as a whole experienced those fear and anxiety for their own social security. And each and every one of us, Jewish Israeli, know someone who was there, who was in captivity, who was killed, who survived. And it was a shifting moment. And the third is the Israeli most right, radical, violent, messianic government Israel ever had, used and mobilized October 7 to act out what the parts of this government already wanted to do anyway. And Smotrich was telling about his ideas way before October 7. So in this process, we had to acknowledge this process, and it's very hard for some members of the team to realize that we are part of a genocidal society. So in this sense, I would say that parts of B'Tselem team are Palestinians and some are Jewish Israelis. So there's maybe different points of view to the term our as the victim society or the victimizer society, but as a team, we are all believe in one goal, and it's just and free society and life for everyone who lives between the river to the sea. That's maybe the third term of our as a team. We're fighting it not as Israelis and Palestinians, but as a group of people who lives here and believes in human rights for all.
Yeah, and I think as you expect from a report from B'Tselem, any other human rights organization. There are a number of chapters. You document the many ways Israel is violating international law, human rights abuse, and is committing genocide. But what I found most interesting is your narrative, which you present on chapter 5. And the report argues that we need to look at genocide as a process, and in understanding the process, we need to understand the current genocidal policies in Gaza as part of a much broader historical trend, where Israel has always, from its founding and before, sought to separate itself from the indigenous Palestinian community. So this is a narrative which I did not find in any other report. So explain to us why you wanted to take that historical lens as your narrative rather than simply focusing on Gaza, human rights abuse, and all the things Israel is doing, which leads them to believe there's genocide. But you're saying, no, this process started much earlier on in the process of separation, and there's always been something beneath the surface, which of the Zionist narrative, which would lead to what we are seeing in Gaza.
Because usually genocide is also a process. It's very hard to determine when it starts on the exact, is it the first attack or, I don't know, October 10th or I don't know. But there was some roots of it as the dehumanization of Palestinians. It didn't start on October 7th. It reached all-time high and a total dehumanization after October 7th. But we've seen it many, many times before. And the use of forcible transfer, no one would argue that that took place in 48. It's an historical fact. So it wasn't the first time that it happened on large scale. And we've seen it in the West Bank for the last couple of years as well. And we've seen it in 67. And we've seen all kinds of indiscriminatory laws towards the years that Israel performed to keep the Jewish supremacy between the river to the sea. And we've seen the fragmentation of people according to their ethnic background, but also according to where they live. Palestinians, even before October 7th, Palestinians in Gaza were treated less than Palestinians in the West Bank, which in their turn are divided to 4 groups: Area C, Area B, Area A, and East Jerusalemites. And there's another group of Palestinians, those who have Israeli citizenship. They all have different set of laws, but it's not only a law, it's a norm in the Israeli society. And above all, there's each and every Jew, no matter where he lives, he could be in the West Bank in settlements or in Tel Aviv, who enjoy full rights. He's a full human being. And it was important for us to understand the logic of the Israeli regime, now genocidal regime, if we want to fight it and demand and to stop the genocide. How we want to understand what's in front of us in order to make the struggle effective.
So the impulse, genocidal impulse, was always latent within not just Zionism, any kind of ethno-nationalist project of separation is always contains the impulse of genocide. It's always there. And in your case, the report highlights that October 7th is not simply an isolated event, but it was the trigger event. It was in part of that long historical cycle. October 7th is the trigger for the implementation of a policy of absolute genocide. So speak to us about why you view October 7th as the main trigger event and not some of the other events throughout history where Israel has bombed Gaza over and over again and enacting...
Because I believe, and we believe, that history is not deterministic. October 7 was a triggering event for genocide because the Israeli current government used it and mobilized it to commit genocide. It could have been different. And also throughout the years, it could have been different. I would say my earlier interview was with a South African journalist, and we were discussing the practices of indiscriminatory laws. And he said, well, we didn't reach that point of genocide. And I said, yeah, because history is not deterministic, although there was a set of rules for blacks and for Hindus and for whites. So what happened was on this, let's call it ideological infrastructure of 70 years, not only ideological, but also ideological infrastructure of those treating Palestinians as less, there was October 7th, which was real, which the Israelis, for maybe the first time in their lives, or at least the first time as a collective, feared for their life. It was real. And then we had the third component is the Israeli government used and mobilized it. So it was a tragic combination that led us to this point. And that's where we are now. It could have been different, but that's not how history went. History went this way.
So let's. I want to ask you about Israeli society. I mean, in the report, you describe how in that process, societies that generally commit genocide often don't see themselves as doing so. Whereas on the one hand, the entire world feels like they've been gaslit. You know, we can see with our own eyes. We can see what's happening in Gaza. We can see Israeli history, and it was leading up to this moment. You can say. But on the other hand, Israeli society seems to be denying that they could ever be participants in such a horrific crime. So how deep is denial within Israeli society in your point of view?
It depends. There are some layers of that. I would say right now, the vast majority of Israel would like Israel to end whatever it does in Gaza. But that's not based because what Israel has committed to the Gazans. That's because vast majority of Israel are tired of this conflict or war or genocide, according to them. It's because of instrumental reasons. They're tired of it. They don't want to serve in the reserves anymore. They don't see the wife, the husband, the kids because they're in Gaza or in the West Bank. They lose money in their businesses. So that's pretty much the vast majority of Israel. There is a small group which tragically have top officials in the government. They are calling the shots now and they want to continue. And that's what Israeli actions are. And there's another small group who are against the atrocities Israel is committing in Gaza, in those words. Some of them call it atrocities or crimes against humanity or genocide, but they do acknowledge that what Israel is doing is wrong. But what is worth highlighting is that the mainstream media, 22 months we're talking now into this assault. So it's not just a shock of a couple of weeks, because who could have imagined and the horrors we see on October 7th. They still don't cover what Israel is actually doing in Gaza. You can hear Israel is fighting, Israel is conquering Rafah, Israel is doing that. It's very clean language. And they don't see the pictures. They don't. You said we're all seeing the pictures. The Israeli public or the Israeli vast majority don't see the pictures in the mainstream media. They still don't show it. It did change a bit in the last 2 or 3 weeks
how are
because of the starvation.
So how are they shielded from that? I mean, so how are Israeli public failing to see those pictures? I mean, social media, is there some kind of a government censorship on the press, on social media in Israel?
It's not government censorship per se. I would say it's a personal censorship of this mainstream media institutions.
Mm.
So vast majority, including those who might be thinking this is horrific, just, I mean, 50-year-olds and above, they are not on Twitter. They are not. My parents are not on Twitter.
Mm.
Uh, so we still live in a world that it's, for the elders at least, and those who are running the society, the economical elite and the political elite, they see the news, the 8 o'clock news. Um, and in another way, I suspect that some people just don't want to know because they, deep in their minds, they know they don't want to see what's going on. They have We as people are complex creatures, and we have many rationalizations we can do.
Right. Mm.
I do believe that a lot of people don't want to see. With some people still justifies and saying what I've said before. They deserve it. It's a whole nation out there. We still hear that on a daily basis.
Yeah. So if they're not watching the genocide or avoiding the images coming out of Gaza, are they aware, or Israeli society overall, are they aware of how this is being seen by Israel's closest allies around the world? The shifts that are taking place in the US over Gaza, in the UK, that there's so much opposition now. Israel's standing in the world has plummeted, even
Uh,
amongst its allies. Are they aware and conscious of the shifts, geopolitical shifts that are taking place?
Yes, for that they are more aware, but for some reason they sometimes don't understand why it's happening. So there's a space for the government to say they hate us, they are anti-Semites, and, and these excuses. But so it does get coverage, but I have to say that so far we haven't seen any action from the international community.
Mm.
So we do hear those statements sometimes, but nothing happens. So
Yeah. I guess, I mean, if the international community was to turn against Israel and Israel becomes kind of pariah, I guess it reinforces the narrative amongst many Jews that, we've always been hated, everyone wants to kill us, we need a state for our own. So it kind of reinforces that narrative. So there's kind of no way out uh, for 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 people who criticize Israel for the right reasons, which is that the reason being that you're committing a war of genocide on Gaza. There's a legitimate concern over that, and we need to be needs to be condemned. But for a lot of Israelis, this is seen as again another part of the historical narrative where Jews have always been hated, and which is not how I see history, but it reinforces that mindset. Do you think that's the case? That's what's playing out in Gaza. I'm sorry, in Israel.
I think that in some ways you're probably right, but shifting public opinion takes time.
Mm.
And if you compare, I would say, the Jewish diaspora in the US opinions now and 30 years ago, there's a huge shift. And not only 30 years ago, but 3 years ago, because they do get the media in some way, at least they do get the open, or at least the open society to speak and exchange languages. They do encounter other people because US is not as segregated as Israel. In Israel, in most cities, Jews and Palestinian citizens of Israel don't live together. But in New York, you have as a Jewish, you live with Indian and Pakistanis and people from all over the world. So that's different. It's very easy to stay inside your echo chamber in Israel.
Yeah.
And shifting public opinion and social concept takes a lot of time and to realize for anyone, not just for Jewish Israelis, that your society was involved in such crimes against humanity. It's very hard and emotionally. You
Yeah.
can sometimes see it in your mind or understand it in your mind, but in order to grasp it and to acknowledge it, it will take decades.
Mm.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. And on to end our conversation on this note, so do you think Israel's allies are actually failing Israel by not holding Israel by the hand and saying, look,
Uh,
you are creating the roots of your own destruction. You know, you need to stop this. You need to change your course. Do you think America, Britain, Israel's so-called allies are actually failing Israel?
of course, we see that way, and I want to also explain why. Uh, because Israel, if they care about Israel, okay, I understand. They don't care about Palestinians, okay? You care about, okay. Um, but myself, my society, we are in a worse condition than we were 2 years ago. Our The Israeli society is more divided. Uh, we live, we are not more secure. We are in a less, in a less, in a worse place economically as a country and as individuals. The prices went high. Uh, we are afraid to travel the world. I mean, okay, you say you care about Israelis. We are in a much worse position. You don't really take care of of the people of Israel. You may care about the project,
Yeah.
but people who live there's no argue. We as the Israelis, we are not the victims for the uh, what's going on in the last 21, 22 months. But if we're talking about the Israeli society, we're in a worse place than we were 2 years ago. Absolutely. No one will deny that unless few, I don't know, radicals. That's 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 a mainstream opinion here.
Yeah. Thank you, Shay. I mean, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I urge everyone to read your report, Our Genocide. It's fascinating. I mean, I really enjoyed reading chapter 5 because some of the other sections, the evidence that you compile, you've read it elsewhere, but the narrative you guys present is really fascinating. Everyone really should understand Gaza as part of a much broader context, much broader cycle of what is happening, and I think that was really enlightening for me and refreshing to hear.
Just for a last note, on top of that, that's why we gave such a clear warning about the West Bank, because it's the same pretty much policy. It's the same Israeli government. It's the same army. And we're seeing the same practices and methods for now in lower scale. And again, some trigger might make Israel to go full power and full scale also in the West Bank. We are very concerned about that.
Yeah, like we are all. Thank you so much, Shay. It's a pleasure talking to you. Bye bye.
Thank you.